Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reimagine v13. Excited to be here talking about all things parachains and interoperability, and of course, Polkadot. I'm your host, Roshan Mirajkar from the MouseBelt team, and today our panel will be discussing the cross-chain impact in Web3, and really excited to have some companies here that were selected from the Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator, the 2022 cohort. So first, let's introduce everyone. Let's meet all of our guests. So we can start with Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Avem. That's an institutional and retail parachain in Polkadot, which is willing to onboard different institutions into the crypto space through Polkadot.
And next, we can go to Erasmus.
Good day, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Erasmus. I'm head of product at Satoshi Pay, the company currently building Pendulum, which is a blockchain that is building this missing link between the DeFi ecosystems and the fiat by essentially bringing in as many robust and stable fiat tokens into a network to allow people to do nice things with them.
Awesome. And Adam?
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Adam. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bitgreen. We're a parachain project in the Polkadot network that's focused on sustainability and corporate ESG. Primarily, we help real-world projects and assets, such as renewable energy projects, microfinance, as well as conservation projects that produce carbon credits, to raise financing. So we help to capitalize those projects. And then we provide additional resources to those projects, as well as provide liquid tokenized markets for investors in those projects to then get liquidity in the event that they're looking to exit their position prematurely before some of those projects actually mature. Very good to be here.
Awesome. And the rest of the Avem team?
Yep, I can continue. Well, my name is Toni, and I'm also from Spain, from Mallorca, Balearic Islands. And nowadays, I'm the CPO and co-founder in the Avem team.
Yeah, here is Bernat, joining the rest of the Avem team. Also from Barcelona, Spain, civil engineer, and currently now the CFO of the company. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, awesome. Now that we've kind of introduced everyone, let's sort of get into it. And I think the first question, let's first break down kind of, what a parachain is and talk about, why did you all choose the Polkadot infrastructure to build a lot of your projects? So I'll go to Adam first, if you maybe want to break down a bit, why did you choose Polkadot? And explain to everyone maybe what are some of the differences between a regular blockchain?
Yeah, happy to do so. Well, the decision for Bitgreen to choose Polkadot actually is kind of dependent on a few other previous decisions that we made. The first was because in many ways, like we're a hybrid infrastructure as well as applications for sustainability. So obviously there is a way for us to orient and construct our platform by being a network of smart contracts. And we could have done so on top of a variety of different parachains, or to do so on top of a general purpose blockchain. Which kind of leads me to answer the first question, which is, what are parachains, or how do those distinguish themselves from other blockchains? So in my mind, a blockchain is an operating system, right? In a way, it's a distributed, it's a way to share computing power and security amongst a variety of different applications. And there are large general purpose blockchains and blockchain networks such as Ethereum or Solana or Avalanche, where there's very little separation between the actual settlement layer of transactions and the application layer. As a result, what we see on Ethereum and others is a tremendous amount of congestion when different applications with different requirements for data usage and speed compete with one another for the same amount of block space. That results in delays, as well as congestion fees, high gas fees, as well as creates a lot of kind of unintended consequences and incentives for like sandwich attacks and whatnot amongst miners and validators. So Bitgreen decided that we wanted to create a blockchain that was specifically geared towards sustainability, not only to avert some of those not only inconveniences, but inefficiencies. But then also what was important for Bitgreen was that we don't view sustainability or ESG as like a bug of a normal business process or as a nice to have feature. We view it as a revenue center, as the actual product. And therefore having an entire blockchain that is 100% geared and focused and designed toward that ultimate aim made sense. It made sense to be able to optimize our entire governance and tokenomics, as well as the technology, in order to advance and motivate the type of behavior that we want to see, which is sustainable behavior. After we made a decision to not build at the application layer or to be smart contracts, instead we wanted to be infrastructure, we wanted to be a layer one, our decision came down to basically 3 choices. Number 1, go it alone. Number 2, number 2, Cosmos. Number 3, Polkadot. The reason why we chose Polkadot very quickly is number 1, we believed in the technical capabilities of the core team, of the Parity team. That was very meaningful for us. We wanted to be aligned with an organization that had not only the technical stripes and had built blockchains before, also was very well funded and had, we would say, the correct notion of how to scale blockchains, which is to separate the settlement layer with the application layer. The relay chain on Polkadot is kind of like shared computational space, right? It exists solely for the purpose of settling transactions. And then application-specific programming and apps have been differentiated and reside on individual blockchains. So in some sense, the Polkadot network is really a constellation of alliances amongst many different purpose-built and purpose-designed blockchains. And that made a lot of sense for us as a blockchain that was committed to sustainability. So we kind of view ourselves as a purpose-built blockchain built for purpose.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And I recently read that I think Polkadot is, being proof of stake is one of the most energy efficient blockchains. So I think for a lot of the viewers watching out there, I think this is definitely going to be an important consideration. And as we get into our talk, excited to hear more about what you guys think. Is this going to help some of the institutions get in more retailers? But yeah, maybe I want to go to Erasmus next. Maybe break down a bit about why your team chose to build on Polkadot.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So Satoshi Pay has been building blockchain products for quite a while. We have this vision that we've been pursuing for close to 7 years, I think, of connecting the world with fast and small transactions to make it super fluent, basically. It's this dream that was in there with the early web. When you started thinking about moving data around, you of course it was obvious that we should also be able to move money around, value around just as easily. So we actually built online payment products using Bitcoin when that was still feasible with the transaction fees. So it's like dinosaur age stuff these days. So and we were based in Berlin, so we actually were very close to the whole Ethereum teams there, and saw the growth in that direction, where we focus more on just the settlement, not so much the smart contract for a while. We, however, saw more and more there was a need for more complex and sophisticated smart contract layer to achieve some of the things that we're working on, and especially for the Forex, for the foreign exchange, market making there. So the exchange of one currency to another. We saw the automatic market makers appear, and it was incredibly appealing to us. So we needed to build something more sophisticated that would allow us to execute complex smart contracts. At that time, we were working on Stellar, which is a network more in line with something like Ripple, which is not at the moment smart contract capable. So we thought, how can we connect these two brilliant visions of the world? Stellar is more focused around regulation and sort of embedding into the traditional finance system and bridging and the real world use case for the masses. But how can we bring this kind of next generation layer to it? So we looked around and we found what is the best way of getting this kind of second layer going, and we found Substrate as a framework. Substrate is it's sort of an out of the box blockchain. Which is actually the basis of both Polkadot and Kusama. So it's really battle tested. Cosmos, as you mentioned, also has a similar SDK. We were looking around, trying out different things, but Substrate just seemed like the most appealing technically. We then realized that to make it work at its best, we had to also use the relay chain, which is this sort of core connecting layer in the Polkadot. Sometime I'll talk about Kusama as well. It's the same as Polkadot, but it's kind of the wild cousin network, kind of a test net with real money. So when you hear me say .sama or Polkadot and Kusama, it's all the same thing. Basically, but that the relay chain layer that they can connect all these different ecosystems also became incredibly appealing to us, because this is exactly what we wanted to do. So being in the blockchain industry for so long, what we've seen is a lot of issues coming up and sort of repeating themselves, well, not repeating themselves, but rhyming, I guess. And we've seen a lot of fragmentation, right? So in a decentralized system where anybody can join, you'll end up seeing a lot of people doing the same thing over and over again in slightly different ways, and no like efficient way of connecting to each other. There's a lot of bridges, and we've seen again and again that the bridges come with a certain risk. And like a different approach to that. The thing that Parity with Polkadot did with the relay chain, where there's more of a sort of a community-based approach, where you get some kind of network guarantees, was very attractive to us. Also, there's some nice things like the governance structures, like there's an inbuilt DAO, and there's an upgradability, so it's easy to actually push these updates, which some of these previous protocols haven't included. And of course, that's some of the co-founders of Ethereum who've seen like the early days of building a smart contract network, all that knowledge, that they could bring that into a new network and start rethinking some of the basics, was also very attractive. So in short, Pendulum, we're trying to again bring in as much sort of robust fiat liquidity into our network from different places, and then sort of distribute it into other ecosystems, and also import it into our ecosystem. But we cannot just go anywhere. It's going to be the Wild West, and we need to have a strong community of qualified projects, right? This is where the crowd loan feature, the fact that you have to put your money where your mouth is to join, right? So there's a vetting process to get into the relay chain network, and just the community around it as well. Just a day-to-day community of talking to people. We're part of the Substrate Builders program. And it's just an amazing community, with people thinking about some of the most important challenges that we're facing. And one final thing, I'm sorry, I've been speaking for a long time, but I just want to say this, that also the scalability issue is of course a constant in blockchain. And it's really interesting. It's not really well promoted, but I can share some links maybe afterwards. But there's actually a lot of very interesting work being done at both sort of the delivery layer of how the data is sort of pushed around, in some of the consensus solutions. Basically, at every single layer of the layer stack, there's some very promising work being done by Parity. So I'm also quite hopeful, very optimistic that the scalability issue will be tackled on the Polkadot, on the .sama network. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that explanation. And I like how you started off with, kind of explaining your intentions, and then you kind of found Polkadot along the way, kind of met some of your, what you were looking for to build. And I think a lot of people don't know that, who's building Polkadot right now, he was one of the co-founders of Ethereum as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So let's sort of go deeper into some of these topics. Let's kind of talk about, why is being having cross-chain ability so important? Why is interoperability so important for adoption? I'll go to the Avem team first. Alex, maybe do you want to break down, tell everyone why interoperability is so interconnected to future adoption, and what are some benefits do you see, Polkadot leading the way in this sector?
Yes, so on the whole Polkadot ecosystem, just to give a little glance as the relay chain, and there's 100 parachains just below. The Polkadot is a layer 0, and then there's 100 parachains which are layer 1s, which each one of us belongs to each one of these parachains. So on building this whole interoperability, Polkadot is more or less the master of it, because as all layer 0s, what they are trying to do is to join in some sort of way these other layer 1s. In the case of Polkadot, is all the parachains. In this sense, they've been putting in place for the last several months, but now it's already live, XCM, which is or XCMP, which is the whole protocol which is making everything fully interoperable, which you can leverage stakings or other features of other parachains into your own parachain, or there's dApps which are fully cross-chain, stakings, etc. In this sense, even the whole tokens with the new feature XC20 token, the equivalent to RC20 token in Ethereum, is making that all the different tokens in each parachains are totally interoperable. And even this XC20 token can go into EVM compatible blockchains. So this XC20 token can go in hardly all the blockchains, which are nowadays live, which are the majority are EVM or even a Polkadot one.
Yeah, there's a lot of standardization coming out, and even the XCM technology for communication. So it's really interesting to see all these updates. And Bernat, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about, do you think there's more room for innovation for institutions to get into DeFi through Polkadot versus something like Ethereum and other costly networks, or will it benefit retail users more?
In our opinion, there's more room for growth for institutions inside Polkadot. Why? Because we defend that and this is one of the main reasons that we are in Polkadot, that the future is cross-chain, it's not multi-chain. What we mean by that? We mean that the problem that we have now with too many layer 1s, at the end they are like a copycat of Ethereum, is that in crypto, you are separating all the liquidity from all the layer 1s in different virtual nations. So the good thing of Polkadot is having an ecosystem that there's no need for bridges, especially when there's a big danger of bridges of being hacked, and also because of having all the liquidity in one whole ecosystem of 100 parachains. So you can transfer native tokens from one parachain to another without having to separate this liquidity. And this is a characteristic that institutional players like a lot. And we think that being in Polkadot is the best way to offer, for example, bankable dApps to all these big players.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting you bring up the hacks and security. I think this is a really good point for Polkadot, because we've seen other networks, try to build cross-chain things, and it doesn't really always work out because you have to worry about both networks. So yeah, I think there's definitely somewhere there. I want to jump to Adam real quick. Do you have any perspective on maybe on the ESG side? Like, do you think institutions will be more willing to, obviously use a layer 0 or another layer 1 that's more eco-friendly? And then I think after this, we can get into talking a little bit about like EVM compatibility and things like that.
It's undeniable that institutions across the board, whether those are corporates using their balance sheets or their operating or their means of production and operating structures, to asset managers and other large institutions, even like multilaterals, are extraordinarily curious and interested in blockchain. And one of the major impediments to them getting involved is the energy intensity and consumption of proof of work consensus mechanisms. That's just an undeniable fact. We read that in the newspaper, we see it over Twitter, we see it reported in the news, and then we also hear it privately when Bitgreen and others actually speak to these large institutions. they realize that the energy consumption of proof of work consensus is going to be a showstopper with their stockholders and their shareholders. So they're looking to other mechanisms or other bridges to be able to utilize blockchain-based distributed ledger technology. It just so happens that Polkadot was ranked by Bloomberg as the most energy efficient blockchain. But we're talking about like something that's way in the right tail compared to some other POS mechanisms. So I'd like to kind of shift when we discuss energy efficiency or call it sustainability. There's really a more nuanced way to look at this. The first dimension is just simply to look at like, what is the energy consumption of a certain network? It's kind of like saying, how much sugar am I eating? Or like, how many packs of cigarettes am I smoking a day, right? We're focusing on the negative, like how many donuts am I having over this weekend and how many beers am I throwing back? And then we can just focus on like, all right, if me as a person, if I'm gonna try to be healthier, I'm gonna like live a better life, then I need to stop eating donuts. And that's like one easy way to look at it. It's meaningful, but it's kind of superficial, right? Which is to focus on the negative. The other way to do it is to just think like, what is the total capacity of a network and all its constituent products, people, knowledge, resources, programming, capital, etc., right? To actually do good in the world. So like we can take a very singular perspective and say like Polkadot is more energy efficient than someone else. But if it's more energy efficient by like a cat's hair, does it really matter? No. Like every chain is going to be able to offset its energy consumption. And frankly, like that is happening already. Near's doing it, Polygon is doing it, Celo is doing it. There are other chains that are just like buying carbon credits to offset their energy consumption, even though POS is 99.95% more energy efficient than proof of work. The next level, right, of this conversation, like the advanced level gameplay, is how do we actually utilize the resources that are inherent, right, and present in this ecosystem, and then use those resources, leverage them to the maximum capacity to actually create positive impact in the world. That's the type of story that will get told in boardrooms and at conferences and at the water cooler and amongst people peer-to-peer. Not so much like, hey, Polkadot uses less energy than Ethereum does, and Ethereum less than Bitcoin, but instead, what is the positive and constructive impact that this network is actually having, and how is it using the capabilities that are maybe only possible through, let's say, like cross-chain messaging within the Polkadot ecosystem to be able to transact and send value quickly, scalably, and securely here within Polkadot that may not actually be possible Polygon or on other layer ones.
Yeah, I like your answer. I think it was very realistic, and I kind of agree with what you're saying, if I understood correct. Like, it's more about the output and not just like putting a sticker and saying like, we're just energy efficient. But I agree, there might be ways for every chain to maybe bridge over. Maybe they're bridging over to like, maybe they're using Polkadot,
think about
right?
it this way again, like how many people set these New Year's resolutions? Most New Year's resolutions are like, I'm going to stop doing, again, donuts, right? Smoking, whatever that is. You're far better off focusing on a positive behavior. Like, I'm going to get to bed by 10 or 10:30. I'm going to have a healthy breakfast. I'm not going to surround myself with negativity, right? I'm going to surround myself with other healthy, inspirational people who are helping me live my best life by role modeling for me. And then by virtue of doing those better things, like you just start eating fewer donuts, right? Like that's just going to become organic and natural based on this new mode of thinking, which is I want to do more good, not I'm going to do less bad, because if I'm doing less bad than someone doing even more bad, then I'm better than them.
Yeah, and I see that mentality across, all of you and even the people in the Polkadot ecosystem, like kind of working together and not trying to, just create projects or create more things just for the fun of it. Yeah, I want to switch gears a bit, or kind of go deeper into talking about like EVM compatibility and kind of where the opportunities for innovation. So I'll jump to Erasmus next. Can you talk a little bit about, I know with Pendulum, you're working on kind of fiat optimized smart contracts for allowing more people to kind of bring more of their assets easily into the ecosystem. In your view, do you think that EVM, will EVM compatibility always be the gold standard, or do you think non-EVM chains, there's more room for innovation and you can move faster?
Oh, a great person to ask this. So I have a personal opinion, and we have a joint opinion as well in our company. So let me first of all start by saying that our CTO, Thorsten Stüber, just recently conducted some research where he was stress testing or sort of benchmarking WebAssembly, which is sort of the core runtime engine out of the box on Polkadot and in Substrate, this framework that I was talking about, and compared that to, for example, running EVM in that same environment, and came up with the result that it's like 2-3 orders of magnitudes faster to use this WebAssembly. So a little background, I don't know, just tell me if I'm over-explaining here, but WebAssembly is basically a new web standard that is developed by the World Wide Web Consortium. So it's actually just intended for your browser to run more complex programming in your browser in a safe manner. And it's basically supported by all the major players. I think Mozilla, Google, these kind of tech giants have all sort of dedicated themselves to this, and it's being rolled out in all browsers. I am personally very bullish on this. The EVM, Gavin Wood, who is one of the co-founders of both Ethereum and of Polkadot. He was there at the beginning and saw EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine being rolled out. And it was, you start out with certain assumptions and you embed certain sort of biases into it, and you try to solve some things, and then you think, okay, we'll solve it again in the future, let's just get it running now. And there's a lot of inefficiencies baked into that, as any standard will have over time, especially when you're doing something so innovative and just completely changing the industry changing as EVM. However, there's always this question: do you then jump ship at some point and start with something new, or do you try to just make it work? Because of course it's very embedded. It has a lot. It's very sticky now. People know Solidity. People can see a future there. There's a lot of liquidity if you build it like that. So my personal design spirit as somebody who's product oriented, I love simplicity and I love efficiency, and I love when there's an industry standard that comes up. However, we also have to acknowledge that as a network is nothing without liquidity on it, without a community around it. So there's always that balance. What we're doing right now is we are working on setting up a WebAssembly alliance for all projects, both on Cosmos, on Polkadot, on any other blockchain that's working on using WebAssembly. I also call it WASM sometimes. Anybody who's working with that, we're sort of setting up an alliance to try to promote this technology as a standard, and trying to go the furthest we can together. So we are actually in the beginning here just focusing around WebAssembly. We're not going to have the EVM compatibility in the first instance, and then further down the line we will include so a little background on our roadmap. We're first going for Kusama parachain, which is this wild cousin network. For there it will be WASM only. And when we go for the Polkadot parachain, then at that point we will also have EVM compatibility. But ideally, Polkadot will bring a very strong community around WASM, and we hope to be part of that movement. But it's sometimes you cannot of course control the crowd out there and the community. So we also know that we have to also adapt to the existing standards if it's required.
I think it's a well-balanced answer, and I'll jump to Toni next. If you want to kind of break down, like, well, you guys are building like, cross-chain DeFi. How does the talks about EVM compatibility versus like non-EVM, how does that affect maybe the way you guys build and just your perspective?
I want to say that I completely agree with Erasmus on the sense of being completely with the UX, with a friendly UX UI, simplicity, because I think that's the main point why the EVM is more used than others, is because it's simple to use, it's easy to use. That's why the people loves it. One of the main points on Polkadot is being able to build a simple UX UI that's not difficult for the rest of the people. If we want to really onboard people from outside DeFi inside, we need to build an ecosystem easy to use. I think this is super super important. And also I know that we want to talk later about the educational side of Polkadot, but I really think that in that sense, there is a little lack of knowledge, let's say, on the Polkadot. In my opinion, I really think that these kind of conversations are really useful for the ecosystem, because people really need to know more about Polkadot. And probably if they could really know the real potential of the whole Polkadot, probably will boost our ecosystem altogether, because I really think that Polkadot is a very, let's say, underrated blockchain of blockchains.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, that was my next topic. So let's jump into it. I'll go to you, Alex. My question is, so do you guys think could you guys see a world where there should be a dedicated parachain, just to education? This could be like making content, or maybe pushing more into university students. And yeah, what do you guys think is some of the barriers or things that are holding back Polkadot from maybe reaching more people?
I think there should be a parachain which is like some sort of academy. Maybe even MouseBelt can apply for one of them and unlock dots there.
We would love to.
All of us could help. Or even Berkeley, as we are all in Berkeley and MouseBelt do a joint venture there. In this sense, I think it would be very optimal, because then there would be this sort of mix of games between the whole economy and knowledge being put in one single parachain, and it could be like a sort of open source parachain for all universities to come on board. And there could be on top Berkeley, MIT, universities from Barcelona, Germany, etc. And they could even leverage their different, not only knowledge, also, let's say, Erasmus programs and all these different things, at least in Europe, that are going on, to exchange these students all over. Maybe this could be even helpful to do it through a parachain, through a layer one.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll jump to you next, Erasmus. What's your perspective on how important, or what's the educational gap right now? Is it like between is it between institutions and understanding technology, or is it more retail users?
That's a very good question, and something. So I'm spent most of my days very deep into the technical and product details of the fundamentals of the network that we are building. And this adoption is something I of course hear more from the growth team, where we work, the growth and marketing team, and the struggles that people have in that direction. I of course naturally gravitate towards evaluating something on its product capacities, and then my spirit is if a product delivers on the fundamentals, and it keeps doing the good work and taking the right decisions, and then from my point of view, then that product will succeed over time. And my first principle point of view is that Polkadot has the capacity to solve the scalability issue, fragmentation issue, It has already embedded a lot of thought into regulation, decentralized regulation through the governance mechanism, plus it has the upgradability. So for me, it checks so many of the fundamental boxes. But of course, that doesn't mean that the wider audience will capture this. And here is actually where I think Pendulum will play a strong role, because what we are really focusing on is to bring on and off ramps to the network. So this kind of last mile delivery, where you are in the token universe, things are a lot smoother when you're already in there, but when you actually need to liquidate to actually start using the tokens with the other people who don't hold crypto, then of course you need these banking integrations. And this is something that we're working on as well on the network, and that then I think the use case that's one side. We're working on just simply being useful, right? So you're in a jurisdiction or in a country where it's really hard to make these cross-border transactions, and you find a solution that works. That's education enough, right? That's all that needs to be said. And then on the and this is sort of our main approach. But of course, I never thought about an educational parachain before. I think getting universities more involved, I think, is an absolutely brilliant idea. This is where we see, of course, a ton of excitement and fresh thinking. And I think there's also a lot of scope at universities. We work very closely with the professors at German universities, and I also know of many other universities where there's a lot of interest academically on these topics. So definitely something that would be very interesting to build. But in short, there's two ways of doing education. One, be really useful, show people that this is worth going through, even if it's a little difficult, then people are willing to learn. And two, of course, get these knowledge hubs where there's a lot of smart people, very interested and looking for new challenges, like a university, for example.
Yeah, I would love to connect with some of those professors and university students, or they just want to learn and they actually use the products, like you said. So definitely agree. I'll jump to you, Adam. Do you think there's any like overlap between kind of what you're working on and, maybe do you think the adoption in the Polkadot ecosystem is on pace, or do you think some education about maybe specifically what you're doing with more green incentives might, if people knew more that it used less energy type thing, that they would use the network more and things like that, or even with students?
I don't know what the timeline is internally with Parity and other teams in terms of onboarding users, capital, and other apps. Very clearly, we can borrow from kind of the history of traditional business and startups, which has kind of given us the last 20 years or so of history, where startups have been building technology and then trying to like poach or gain the usership from, let's say, like analog activities, or like now Web 2 over to Web 3. Your product has to be 10 times better. Otherwise, inertia sets in and people are unwilling to move. So I think that's Polkadot's primary challenge. And that's the primary challenge of every other layer one that's attempting to bring capital, users, and engineering teams who are now building on EVM over to their ecosystems. So like we can have just a superior product that also needs to be something that's not merely significantly superior, but then also needs to be recognized as superior by the people who are going to use it. And it needs to be not by just a slim margin, but by 5x, 10x. It needs to be clearly better. And then it needs to continue to perform to lock those users in. And it's very hard to make that case when many applications being built on Polkadot are like kind of copy paste of what already exists on EVM chains. And of course, like there are some very unique use cases here in Polkadot. And many of those copy pastes are fundamental to a thriving ecosystem. But if we're really discussing like how to make Polkadot the premier network and how we bring like capital off of EVM chains and then onto Polkadot chains, for example, then it needs to be 10 times better and it has to have unique use cases. One of those unique use cases, like just to be self-promotional, is Bitgreen and sustainability. We aren't on any other chain. And it's very unlikely that anyone could develop or build what we're attempting to do on top of Ethereum. It really can't be done. It requires its own chain. There are some other really unique use cases as well. So if there's a good case to be made for having an educational parachain, no doubt that economic activity is kind of a product of opportunity and then capability. And the capability comes from education. So it's not merely a question of like making business development inroads at universities and schools. All of that is super important. Fast forward like 5-10 years from now, like that will be a real application of blockchain technology in the classroom. We will see that. Can that product be 10 times better with a parachain that interconnects and interoperates with other parachains within the Polkadot ecosystem? And is there like shared capabilities so that that solution can be delivered in a manner that is not just more efficient, it's superior and it's faster to market than if one were to build that on an EVM chain? I think that's the big question. But there's no doubt, I think that if we're looking for Polkadot to contend with Ethereum, right, it needs to poach capital, resources, talent, move those off of Ethereum, right? It's not enough to just say like, well, we have interchain messaging. That just doesn't resonate with the vast majority of people. It's incumbent on Polkadot, writ large, the ecosystem, to develop unique applications and unique uses of technology that don't exist elsewhere, and that frankly could only exist on this chain at the level of performance that's possible within the Polkadot ecosystem.
I really like that answer. I think that answer goes across to like anyone who's building across any chains. Like, what can you build on whatever chain you're building on that's unique to that chain that people can't replicate, like you said. I think, yeah, I would say not that replication is not important, but as we're seeing, not all the like copy paste projects really last when things get tough right now. But we're all still here building. I have one more question.
I would like to add.
Bernat,
I would like to add one thing about the educational parachain concept, which is pretty cool. I think that we are moving towards an era where what is known as a job in the 20th century will cease to exist. What I mean by that is that there will no be work for all. This makes me think that people in general will have more free time to devote to themselves. So I do see a large part of the middle class becoming like almost necessary investors. So what I mean by that is that Web3 will help to create a new middle class of digital age, but this time not between rich and poor, like that 20th century, but between those who thrive in this crypto borderless world, the digital native people, and those who don't, the digital illiterate people. So this is why I strongly support, and it's really important, this initiative to build an educational parachain, which I think that is really a brilliant idea.
No, 100%. I'm glad we brought it up and we talked about it. I haven't seen any other parachains just focus on education, and I really like all the ideas here of, yeah, it can totally plug in and support the other parachains out there. And some of the other panels, a lot of people are discussing, parachains should work with each other, be more collaborative than competitive. But I know there's an aspect to that as well. To end things off, I'll just go around. If all of you want to give your final thoughts on what are the future business model or products that you're excited about on Polkadot, or give us your one or two best pieces of advice for builders on Polkadot. Alex, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say that most unique feature on the whole Polkadot is this interoperability, so that you can leverage things from one parachains to the other parachains, or one dApps to the other dApps, I think this is game changing. And these tokens, which are crossed through all parachains without breaches and going to EVM compatible blockchains, that's also game changing. I would really encourage different projects to go into the different parachains to build there, because you can leverage this ecosystem, which is fully cross-chain, and as Erasmus said, build it up on top of WebAssembly, WASP, and this Rust substrate ecosystem, which has much more features and more advanced ones than Solidity.
Yeah, I would like to add something on the XCM part. It's important to know that this XCM is not only for the assets. I mean, we can change in a horizontal way. I mean, parachain between parachain, not only assets but also smart contracts and a lot of type of information. So I think this is an opportunity for different parachains to try to collaborate and try to share in any way the unique feature of each parachain between them. So yeah.
And Bernat, we'll go to you next.
I think that for me, the game changing in Polkadot is not dividing liquidity. I mean, having all the native tokens from all the layer ones being able to move around one whole ecosystem, a blockchain of blockchains. As Toni mentioned before, is Polkadot. I see it in the next 2-3 years being one of the top cryptocurrencies.
For sure. And Erasmus, if you want to go next.
Sorry, my daughter just joined for a second. Can I just ask what was the question again?
Oh, no worries. Just give us your final thoughts on, either advice on like what are the future business models on Polkadot, or what are you excited about, or advice for like new builders who are building on Polkadot.
So my advice is that it's one of the most exciting technologically developing communities out there, and I think the community is actually one of the strong key drivers here. So personally, I would love to see there's approaches to this, but I especially would love to see a solution to the secret key UX, which is a showstopper, still is after a decade of people trying to solve this. So there's a lot of progress being made there, but it's still a big obstacle for adoption. So I would love to see somebody come in and work on that. And come and join Polkadot as one of the strongest communities out there, simply because you are part of a group of serious projects that have to put their money where their mouth is to show they can get in there. And there's a lot of willingness to simply be in a community and build in that community. And I think that's incredibly exciting.
Well said. For anyone watching this, yeah, there's tons of opportunities to build with everyone here in the community. Lastly, Adam, take us out and give us your best advice.
Cool. My advice is build a company with a viable business model, a model that is not reliant on like DeFi, NFTs, the innovation or the gambling or investing that took place in the wake of the DeFi spring and summer. Like that trade is over now, right? And this is a rapidly professionalizing and maturing market, which is good. We should be applauding that and cheering it and commending this transition. The next wave of innovation will be bridging real world business models on chain, right? And then re-releasing those into the real world. And the teams that do that and the ecosystem that supports it and pushes for those type of business models is going to win out in the end. It's not going to be the ecosystem that is facilitating trillions of dollars of transaction amongst the same million wallets. Like that was March 2020 until March 2022. Next.
Well said. And thank you all for your time here joining us today. I learned a ton of new perspectives. And for our audience out there, stay tuned. We're bringing you more interviews at Reimagine V13. Thank you all.